Hey everyone, it's Espira, and welcome back to the Super Combo Podcast. As usual, I'm joined by co-host Chris of UniX. Chris, how you doing today?
I am doing very, very, very well. Exhausted, but the content feels really, really fun right now to do, and I am excited to do more of it. So just keep your eyes peeled. We're about to jump into a really cool podcast. I can feel it in my bones. They're all really cool podcasts, but this is going to be cool podcast, which is
Yeah.
basically as cool as they always are.
No, 100% agree. I mean, it's a different swing, right? We've been in a lull for so long just because of and I feel like in normal circumstances it wouldn't be the case, but like regional stopped and then like nothing happened for like a month, and then that's happened, and then nothing happened for like a month, and then Worlds happened, and then nothing happened for like 2 months, and now we're back in the swing of like regionals and like events, celebration style events, and now it's nice to have like, I mean, as a content creator, it's always nice to have quote unquote free content, right? Like for me, a regional is free content because it's a free stream that'll get high viewership. You can cover decks, deck profiles, event meta, all that stuff. So it's a good time to be back in the swing of things, of being able to grind out just talking about the game in a way that feels evolving, as opposed to just like, all right, well, week 3 of no news. What tier list can I make today?
Anyone that doesn't put Gohan beneath SS4 Bardock, I'll tell you what.
Hey man, that video has 4K views. I'm gonna just accept that those 4K people have accepted my tier list as optimal, and Gohan is below SS4 Bardock. I just want to say this past regional weekend, Bardock topped and Gohan didn't. So sorry, guys.
You know what? I don't want to really disappoint anybody, but some people have been showing me these Gohan lists, and all I'm gonna say is that's not it, Chief. So I'm not gonna say it's the deck. I'm going to say I think it's the build.
Okay.
I see a lot of people maining Kaiokens, which to me makes no sense. Like, if you're that afraid of Slug, I don't know. I haven't seen Slug anywhere. Like, you can put it in Trunks Jita, but like, I don't know about that one. And I've been seeing a lot of people like running anywhere from 3 to 4 Android 17 SRs. Like this card in a Gohan deck is a 4 drop. It's like a 3 to 4 drop essentially. You're not using it on turns 1 and 2. So I don't understand why you're trying to max out on copies like you want to open up with it every game. Like, there's just things. I could make a whole video on what not to do, but that's not what this podcast is about.
Right.
Spoken by your world's best Gohan player.
You'll just save that after your topping deck profile, right? Once you've taken it down, spill the beans on why everyone was doing it wrong.
100%. Actually, the plan. You spoiled my content for next week after Miami.
Spoiled, my bad. So we do have a couple of topics to talk about. The DBS Fest Arlington was this past weekend, so we'll cover that in terms of everything that happened around that. And then there's the biggest controversy come out of the past couple of days, about how certain cards get ruled. And actually, this has implications for a good number of cards. So odds are, I think this will take a little bit longer to fix, but we'll talk about it when we jump into it. So starting it off, DBS Fest Arlington. One of the things, first best of one pre-side event that we've ever get to play, and more likely than not the testing ground for what will be the way that we play the game going into the regional season after March, with Michael Kano taking it down with KP, right? So
correct.
So KP being in the finals of the last 3 big tournaments, and taking down 2 of them. So is KP tier 0? Is it too good? Are people just not respecting KP as a deck and having enough side deck for it?
Well, unless that was rhetorical, in which case I'm sorry for just taking this and flying off.
No, please go.
I don't think KP is tier 0 because there are a couple decks that can still contend with it very, very well. KP versus other comparable red decks is very rough. Like, one of the main things about KP is probably the freest in terms of battle cards that we have had in a long time. They've gotten rid of so many free play style type decks, and KP still very much so lives in that realm. And it's not like red necessarily got better, but things that were gatekeeping red, such as, I don't know, yellow's extreme ability to keep red out of the combat or combo phase, is actually how red kind of got shadow buffed. We are now freely able to enter the combo phase without every turn resulting in a power of a Super Saiyan slash Zamasu super combo the moment you turn a single battle card sideways. So, with that being said, King Piccolo plays a lot of free cards, is able to keep up aggression, and its awakening turn is very, very strong because generally you're gaining 3 cards, you're going up a life, and you're able to add so much onto the board. The deck is able to go through cards because of Piano and the Piccolo Unison, and the Piccolo Unison itself is busted. It allows you to really keep your opponent's pressure down just by defending themselves. It's one of those cards where I see what it's supposed to do. It's like red stereotypically hasn't been one of the most defensive colors. So one of the ways that you counterbalance that is by making red have, just aggression on its aggression. Like it takes away from your opponent's board setup while you're aggressing. You swing, they counter, you pop something on their board. This, in theory, is more like an offensive shield. You get rid of some of their board presence, and therefore you won't have to defend yourself as hard the next turn. The only issue is that red is no longer bad at defending itself remotely. Like Yamcha, Wolfang Fist, like Violent Rays is one of the best floodgates in the game for a while. If things are too low for Violent Rays, you've got King Vegeta's imposing presence as long as your leader is a Saiyan. Like red, I don't think red is as crappy at defending itself as it needs to be to have Piccolo Junior Unison be a card that's still in the game. It's just atrocious. That being said, King Piccolo is just, it allows itself to apply pressure. It has a combo engine that speeds the deck as well. Lots of people don't understand how, in design space, Piccolo is a deck that sees a gajillion cards a turn. You draw 1 per turn, you plus 1 with Piccolo for another card. You're going to be able to cycle cards when you combo. Your leader is putting a card from your deck to your life and then comboing with a card in your life. That is another card. You were filtering another card. You were going 1 card further in your deck and it is open knowledge. So yes, that counts as how many cards Piccolo sees per turn. It's in all just kind of wild in general. But I don't think it's tier 0. I do think that until this past weekend, people were not respecting it. Oh, it's an old deck. I need to play U7 Goku. But the thing is, this deck allows you to see a lot of options. And in a good player's hands, the more options they can see, exponentially just increases how good the deck is. The more options you can see, the more plays they can make. The more plays they can make, the more ways they can outplay you, the more ways they can respond to situations. So while not tier 0, because Gogeta Zeno, high rolling, smashes his deck. Like, if you just looked at some of the matchups, like Danny Wynn destroyed King Piccolo most of day 1, and then he destroyed it in top 8 until he lost. Where if you were watching the stream, his first 2 mills were like almost unplayable. Like, which is fair. That's the fate you play when you just pick up 5 cards and put them into the drop or the warp. But it was pretty unfortunate RNG on his part, considering how easily it looked like he handled KP. There are some builds of Sin Shinron that can do exceptionally well. I will just say we saw a lot of late game control Sin Shinron during the stream, and we saw how King Piccolo mop those up. So that's all I'm going to say on that one, because I have some people that are invested, and I'm not trying to spill all the spec. But when it comes to King Piccolo now, to be tier 0, you have to be literally like unfuckwittable. And that we've had very few tier 0 formats in the game. Like, do you guys remember when Yellow, Blue, Hurrigarn, Storm could only really be contested by that is the definition of a tier 0 format. When your top deck laughs off any other matchup but the mirror, that's a tier 0 deck.
Yeah.
And King Piccolo is not there yet. And I don't think it can be, because it's not like they're printing any cards to make the deck better necessarily. They're done with that archetype. Any buffs that King Piccolo gets are red buffs, not King Piccolo buffs. So I don't think it'll ever be tier 0, to answer that question.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think it's just in a really good position, and I think people are still in a position where they're not really respecting it. And like, you get those Kortsu guys in the deck, guys. Make sure to play around the fact, if you're going to swing into King Piccolo, recognize that he's going to get a free combo, so you need to combo above that so that he actually uses cards when he's comboing away, so that you can grind away at his hand size. generally, I'd say ignore the unison because if you're gonna waste resources trying to kill the unison, it's a waste of time. They're just going to protect it. So unless you know you can actually like kill the unison, I'd say like maybe not bother. But in general, it's a very strong deck. It's very solid. And it's not unbeatable. We're seeing people win with it. And you know, there's I'll say the meta is still pretty diverse in terms of what you can see. It does lean red. It does lean pretty heavy on red in terms of KP being a big representation of top cut, as well as having the smattering of other red decks. I mean, Cooler Mill is not really a red deck, but I mean that exists. Red U7 is obviously another big one in anything that's running the U7 package. So in general, I think there's a lot of room to explore, and this is kind of what I love about new formats, anyways. Right? It's just people, all right. So now KP's got targeted us back. How do we adjust to that? Can we adjust to it in a way that allows us to have success? And if that's the case, then how does the meta evolve around that? So that's been fun to see. I mean, I will say, while I'm not shocked that KP's still doing well. I think for me, it was very well rounded that it's a deck that could still do incredibly well going into the new format. Doing this well, where it takes a finals placing in the last 3 big tournaments, is shocking. Um, but also when you note the players that are playing the decks themselves, right? Like, you got in the regionals, you got Joey Palladino, you got Marcel Russell, arguably one of the best aggro players to ever play the game. Michael Kano's no slouch either when we're talking about DBS Fest, as well as John Carlo was there performing extremely well with it. Eddie St. Hilaire. So I'll say, extremely good piloting a deck that has a lot of options, deep draws, and is able to figure out what's the best line of play for any given opportunity. Will definitely lend itself well. When we look at the rest of Arlington, and of course, there's been a bunch of DBS Fests all around. There was one in Australia, in the UK, which shout outs to the one guy in the UK who finished 3rd in their DBS Fest with Red Yellow Baby. I don't know who you are, but props to you, my dude. So as far as Arlington goes, I only have the top 8 in front of me, and I know for anyone who needs coverage on the past day 1, day 2 of the event, huge, go check out Chris's channel because he's done mad coverage on top of it. So if you guys want the big deets, go on there. But top 8, we've got 3 KPs, we've got a Gogeta Xeno, a Sen Shenron, a Trunks Vegeta, a Red Blue Soul Striker, and a set 16 U7 Goku. And I know there's more of a breakdown there. Amani obviously play. What was Amani piloting?
Amani played Sen in Texas.
Yeah, there you go. So, and then a smattering of other players playing other stuff, and Chris will give us the better breakdown there. But just pretty diverse. But the big thing that we're not seeing here, and I think is going to ring true for Miami, is the lack of true best of 1 decks. Last podcast we were talking about how the core regional really reflected the best of 1 format, in which a lot of decks that can't be hated out or need to be hated out or do some very linear, very strange, can often take some top placements, which it 100% have. Here, we're seeing this top cut be very much more aligned with what you would expect when people are able to bring in sideboard options and able to skew the matchups favorably on their side from there.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, straight up, yeah.
So then, given what we're seeing, what do you think are your takeaway from the results from these past fests that we've been seeing around for this week?
Some things are pretty typical of a startup format tournament. Newer decks are represented because people want a change in play, and then when it comes to the older tried and true decks, some of them are starting to shine a little bit more. It's a matter of, you can play test, but unless you sit here and just go completely off, and you and your entire, and granted, this happens when you have a good testing crew. This happens. They take all the old stuff, they take all the new stuff, and they try to see exactly what works. And that's when you have people coming out and winning tournaments with new decks off, just straight off the cuff. But in most cases, people are going to go into things that they know are tried and true, maybe some small additions. And I think these tournaments reflected that. Trunks Vegeta, Xeno Trunks, and U7 Goku started off these tournaments being the most represented decks that we had, period. King Piccolo, however, came up in each top cut along with Sen Shenron, along with Soul Striker in 1 to 2 copies. Then you start kind of shifting, and one of these tournaments had 3 King Piccolos in top 16. We're starting to settle at a point where I think people are starting to have more faith in the OG strategies of our last couple formats than they are the new ones, and that's kind of weird to me. But I think there's still time to tap these new decks. I don't think they're kind of spent yet. I just think that people are trying to win these prizes. They're trying to like make these splashes, and more people are just feeling more confident playing older decks than they are the newer ones. Because I think some of them still have cat. Not you, Trunks Cheetah, but some.
Yeah. I think there's a decent takeaway here. And of course, guys, the biggest thing is, of course, start recognizing what's being played, start prepping those sideboards, and start understanding what to put in them, right? KP, you have to sideboard for KP. Black is still going to do its thing. While we didn't see Trunks in large numbers here, in other regions, we did see that Trunks, was a strong prevailing deck. So you guys are going to have to take into account those matchups and start sideboarding for them. And that's the thing, right? As the meta evolves, the more you're ready to understand to what goes into your sideboard. So, with that said, Miami is coming down the pipeline. What are we to expect? I mean, obviously, Chris is going to take it down with. I'm not going to spill the beans, but I think 9 out of 10 listeners can guess what deck he's going to take. So,
Jesus.
so the things to expect from Miami. I think much of the same. I don't think things change. Well, that's not true. So actually, I'm going to go and hold off on what we should expect going into Miami, because there is an additional topic that I kind of want to roll into that, because it could very much change what we're going to see next week. Big deal. So instead, I'm going to focus on Arlington. Pivoting a little bit, we did have a situation where 2 players, and I'm not going to name names because, well, I mean, do I not? The winner of the event ended up making it into Top Cut for day 2 by IDing their last round, which effectively cut off an entire round of play, and as well kicked out 2 X1 players from being able to make Top Cut contention, which I think is absolutely baffling.
Yep.
So my take on this. First off, I actually don't mind IDs in a game that allows it. I come from Magic the Gathering. That's a game that very much has normalized the idea of ID, and to a point, yeah, because like, how are you really going to prevent players from playing into a draw in like most games that allow draws to happen, right? Like in Dragon Ball, you could very much just play to a point where no one's taken life, and if it wasn't for the tiebreaker rules, you could just end on a game that nothing happened. So it is an incredibly difficult way to be able to manage and to be able to prevent. However, we have so many tiebreakers in Dragon Ball now, and there's so many ways that we got to prevent that effectively they even say, like, yeah, IDs aren't a thing, and if you attempt to ID, there are punishments. So it super sucks. Unfortunately, the TO made the decision that they're just going to assign a draw. The software didn't allow for double losses, unfortunately, at which point, I'm not going to lie, but maybe even a DQ was appropriate at that point. But nevertheless, big rip to the players who weren't able to make Top Cut. This is obviously something that should get rectified. I mean, in the rule book, it should just, there's already an ID section. So naturally just update the software to allow for it to actually deal with the kind of situation that popped up. Yeah, this effectively very much skewed the top 16. It killed the tournament. And I think the biggest takeaway is also the fact that, playing until 1 undefeated allows for these kinds of super feels bad. Because like, our game really doesn't allow for draws because of the play until 1 undefeated, which means that oftentimes the draws limit the amount of rounds we play, which means that there's no clear cuts for Top Cut. In any other scenario where we weren't playing until 1 undefeated, draws happen, but they're not backbreaking, right? Like, draws don't end up ruining the entirety of Top Cut just because it doesn't shorten the tournament, at which point people are able to play out more rounds, which means that, scores stabilize. So realistically, they announced 8 rounds. It should have been 8 rounds. And I think while the ID super sucks, the decision on the TO was unfortunate. The players shouldn't have done it and should have probably been, punished accordingly for it. And, I heard that the ones who did make Top Cut are getting reparations, which is great. Super happy for them. The crux of it all is really the fact that we still play until 1 undefeated, which wasn't an issue, which like was fine. Now that draws got taken away, and usually that means we're going to play up till those rounds anyways, but nevertheless, we should probably just get rid of it.
It's definitely not a feel-good moment.
Yeah, so we'll see. Odds are it probably won't happen again, but fingers crossed. And I'm sure that this will be something that Bandai has a discussion with on the back end. But yeah, this is super unfortunate. A bit of a blemish in terms of the tournament itself, which is only exacerbated by the fact that day one wasn't streamed at all. So like
Oh,
all the focus for the event was pushed down into day two, which means all the eyes were on it. So sucks. I mean, I don't know if you have like any perspectives on it, but I think it's just something notable to say and just be like, it impacted the tournament. These are the realities of it, and let's hopefully there will be strides to be able to move past it in future events.
I feel like seeing more and more of the story unfold has kind of been really crazy because like I was like, TOs need to never host a game again. Now, finding out finding out that, apparently their software broke and this made it so that, they could not freaking making this so that they could not.
Assign losses.
Yes, that was kind of just like bad in general. Like it definitely sucked that happened. But the fact of the matter is, there's no way that this happens. Like you can say what you want, but there's like I know Kano's a really cool dude. I don't know enough about Silva, but I've heard a couple of things that I just didn't sit with me well. But I'll leave that for never. Um, Basically, the things that I'm hearing are that like there's no way this happens unintentionally. There's no way two undefeated people just don't show up.
No,
Like
it's 100% intentional.
exactly. Um, it's just that part alone deserves disqualification in my opinion. Like that alone, like this whole format and the rules that are like there are there so that nobody nobody can tie, and you go out of your way to tie. And frankly, also at X1, here's another thing. Yes, I know their system didn't allow drops, but here's my thing. If I'm X1, there is no way you're going to catch me leaving the table hoping that it's a double draw. No, that shit is confirmed before I leave the building. So when you're telling me, oh, they left and it just couldn't be nah, that's BS. Somebody talked to an official gave them some word, they decided what to do from there.
Mhm. Yeah, they
That alone.
somehow they found out that this is what would happen if they didn't show to the table. Because
That alone.
there's no way you don't do it otherwise.
Yep, that alone is enough. That should have just been it right there. Like kill it with fire. And it sucks because Seltzer and Rohit are good players, and this is the first time this happened to Seltzer. This like it's just not. Look, draws are cool and all. Sometimes you can't help it, but when people draw, decks like U7 Red Gohan win Gen Con. You just don't. You don't draw, right? When a whole slew of top tables draws, like fuck shit happens. And so what I'm trying to basically say is I don't like the way it was handled. It kept people like it doesn't matter what I may think of the people. It doesn't matter what I may think of the TO. It doesn't matter what I think about IDA. At the end of the day, two people that did not show up to their tables should not have a better record than two people that played out their rounds. Just shouldn't. That's the
Yeah.
dumbest crap I've ever heard of.
Yeah, I agree. Especially
So,
especially in a world where we go out of our way to have formats that can't cause IDs, right? Between like changing the rules to a way where it functionally just shouldn't happen.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's a little blemish. It's unfortunate, and it just wouldn't have been genuine of us to not at least talk about it, just because it's been a big topic. I think a lot of people have been talking about it. Joey made a video about it. Brian, Stage Zero Android, the man with a million names, has also been talking about it. And in general, just the biggest takeaway as far as tournament organizers: get rid of play until one undefeated. Like, just suck it up. In terms of overall, there were some actions that could have been taken accordingly. I was on the same boat as you, as when I heard about everything that happened with this event. I'm like, well, rip this TO. I guess they're never doing anything with Bandai again. But like when you get a minute to cool down and realize, okay, maybe let people have their 1 to 2 steps to try and figure things out and grow from something like this, then all the better. So I
Mhm.
mean, we'll see. We'll see what the future brings. We'll see if this TO ends up running events again for Bandai stuff, and we'll see how the if any sweeping changes come down the road in terms of probably not for Arlington, but maybe going into the regional season April onwards. Mentioning Miami though, so we've had this event and we're going to go into Miami. Of course, I think the biggest takeaways are the fact that we already know what a lot of big players are between the regional and this fest. They've been kind of confirmed, and now we have an idea of what we're going to be playing into. I will say it's a huge shame we didn't get to see the day one streamed for Arlington, just because it would have given us so much more of a better perspective on how decks played into sideboarded matches. We've seen a little bit of that in terms of like some sideboard tech. The spiciest tech I think we saw Sunday was the fact that they brought in the Unison Goku, the yellow one that like negates skills of battle cards 5 or less. Like that was like spicy sideboard tech. Big ups on that usage. So so we're seeing that. So we'll see how that pivots going over into Miami. However, there are a new set of rulings on cards that are going to significantly change the way that they're played. Right now they're ruled a certain way. Ultimate Dark Dragon Slaying Bullet is a 1-cost counterplay that says if your opponent is playing a Unison card, comma, they may either remove a marker from it for every 2 cards in their drop area or place it in their drop-in area instead of playing it. And if they don't do either of those things, your opponent can only attack one more time this turn. Now, the way that this is being ruled, and it's appropriately ruled, it's stupid, don't get me wrong, is that you can play this on a battle card, and because the first 2 requirements can't be met of them not removing 2 markers or not sending a unison to drop, then they can only attack once per turn. So guaranteeing basically a dormant potential effect on your opponent once they play a battle card. Now, you know it, I know it, we all know it, that the intent was that this counterplay had to be played against the Unison card. However, it's not ruled that way. The way that the game works, you try and resolve as much text as possible because playing it on a Unison is not part of the cost of the counterplay. At the moment, this is basically a free dormant. This is huge.
Yeah.
This is absolutely game-changing. For my Janemba fanatics out there, this is a 4 of in your deck now. Congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
But we've had multiple, all judges say, okay, yeah, actually, this does work this way. Although we have had David Fashbinder, who's like the number 1 straight to Bandai judge, the only level 3 in the game to my knowledge, say like, bro, if it was up to me, this would not work this way, and I'm definitely going to Bandai. If you are you will need to find out for Arlington, unless Bandai makes an announcement. Then if Bandai makes an announcement, makes a errata, whatever, then fine, so be it. However, if you are playing in Miami, find out if PPG is going to enforce the current ruling. Because I will say, if you are Canadian playing in the Carta Magica Fest, they have already announced that Dark Dragon Slaying Bullet will be played as written until something is said about it officially from Bandai.
Now, I am going to weigh in slightly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to this sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
When you look at how Bandai does these things, it's clear that that Dragon Slaying Bullet, as well as there's another card actually in the same set in green that's worded the exact same way.
Yeah, Power Beyond Super Saiyan 2, baby.
Yep. These are clearly mess ups. Like, so that's kind of just, that is a problem. But these are worded in ways where a single semicolon would change the entirety of how they're played.
Instead of a comma.
And the fact that this is blowing up in forums, this is blowing up in the community group, this is blowing up in the judge group. And by all means, the judge group is probably more even looked upon than the community group. I have strong faith that this is going to get touched on in this following week.
Yeah, probably.
I have strong faith. Like, this is clearly not as they intended, and Bandai generally is very quick to errata things when they are straight, flat out not being used as intended.
Yep. If anything, I'm just shocked it took this long for people to be like, "Oh, wait a minute." um, although big ups to my like once again, honestly, if you're any deck that's trying to go late to game, this is arguably the strongest your deck will ever be. Janemba players, if you have time between now and arguably the end of the week before they announce an errata, this is the strongest your deck will ever be. So take it to locals, really piss off the people who go to your locals, and then put it away because I have no doubt in my mind that this will be changed. This will be taken away. For all the cards across the board, there was that one. There's that one. There's one with like Hidden Power of the Saiyans, but like that has always worked that way, and everyone was fine with that. Like that's how people used to play it, anyways. So just to say, take advantage of it. I don't know when the errata, like I am almost 99.9% guaranteed that an errata will be issued because the effect is just way too powerful. So,
Mm.
and it's generic. Any deck can run it. It's colorless. It costs 1. So every single deck can run it. So the question is, will it be live for this weekend? Because I'll tell you right now, I already have 3 slotted into my deck. And I took it to locals today, and everyone hated it. So we'll have to see because arguably this is almost like a 3-4 of in every single deck that can run it, which is every single deck if it for however long it sticks. And this will have ramifications to how the fests are played this weekend. In a way that means arguably Miami could be a non-starter, dead on arrival, a big blemish on the 2022 competitive season, just because it was the one tournament where people were allowed to use Bullet the way it wasn't intended to be used. So
I
one,
mean,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. One missed semicolon, changing it all. So with that said, that's obviously big talk. A lot of the community going up in arms about it. Um, some people I've heard say like, bro, it's not okay that TOs are holding this ruling standing, and I'm like, I hear you, but at the same time, we just always have to play cards as written and not as intended. There have been a number of cards in the past where like eventually got changed to written as intended, but if we're always going to just rule things based on how we feel Bandai meant for things to be played, which usually we're pretty accurate about most of the time, it doesn't change the fact that that puts like a lot of asterisks on a lot of interactions across the game, and we just can't do that to ourselves. So it sucks. And like people bought out the card, so if you're bought like a playset for like $100 because you need them for this weekend, and then like 2 days later, Bandai says like, "Oops, it doesn't work that way," and the card goes back to being a $3 card. Like, I'm sorry. Tough. So here's to hoping that's not you guys, but the card did get bought out. It's like $20 a piece now, so we'll see what happens with that. Oy, 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 oy. But yeah, so I won't be going to Miami, nor did I go to Arlington, just because as a Canadian traveling to these events would neg me like $1,000, and unless I'm winning the entire thing, I don't think I'm taking that away back with me. So instead, luckily as a Canadian, we do have the online Carta Magica one, so I'll be participating in that one, and I will be streaming my game. So if you guys want to watch me be the villain for a weekend, because I will be doing something that will be abusing the way the rules are meant to be used and played. So if you guys want to have that fun or yell at me the entire weekend, I will be live on Saturday. But I do know that your boy Chris is going to Miami. So what are your plans in terms of your weekend trying to take down DBS Fest Miami, Mr. UniX?
Well, the way I'm tackling it, like I'm actually looking at my sideboard right now, just kind of getting it in. I feel like I need to be extra cognizant of the fact that King Piccolo is about to be. I'm not going to say rampant. One thing I've noticed is that these decks like Sen and KP, like I said, they're not new. Some people would refer to them as stale, so they're never going to be quite rampant. But the issue is good players will be playing good decks, and that means you may not see King Piccolo or Sen for a little bit, but when you do see it in round 5 or round 6, it's going to be piloted by somebody who has a functioning brainstem or worse, a high performance brainstem. And that's gang. That's gang ish. So I am trying to, as we speak, because my meta call kind of put me at a point where I felt like I needed to be best prepared for Sin Shenron. And what I'm starting to realize right now is that I may have oversided for Sin Shenron and
Hmm.
overtuned for it. And so I am now trying to convert more of my 65 to handle King Piccolo because I'm at a comfortable space where I realize that there are about 2 cards I could cut that I thought I need for Sin that I don't need for Sin. Then you have you also have the uh hmm it's kind of weird because I with both decks I'm thinking about playing. I like my blue matchup and I like my ability to kind of race certain decks. I will be playing a little bit aggressive, but yeah, going into this event, I think you can't be caught by sin lacking, and so I think that if you're going to this event, you should probably be having some form of copies of Realm of the Gods, namely because they are non-battle card based removal, which means that when somebody has a 9-drop on board, you just simply need to turn a Unison or a Leader sideways, tap on energy, and send that dude packing. Yes, they get 2 cards, but 2 cards in hand, I'm pretty sure is a bitter trade, but it's a good trade for you being able to use any of your effects as they come into play.
Hmm.
So that's a thing. Against King Piccolo, you guys are going to really have to start watching these streams and see how they operate. King Piccolo is extremely flexible, and there aren't many times in the game where you can actually be safe. If you even leave them with half a board, that board's about to probably double if they feel like putting on the gas. So you have to be really careful. And then it's kind of weird because this format is still kind of in the place that George and I talked about before, in the sense that you are in a position where if you go too high, you're going to get raced off the ground. If you go too low, you're going to get stabilized on. So the best decks right now are aggressive decks that can tempo into mid range, or control-y decks that can tempo into mid range, because you have to be able to meet that middle ground. You can't be on too far of an extreme. I guess mid range that kind of can go control-y. I don't like necessarily control-y that kind of dips down because you can still get raced hard. So I think like you want to be able to touch the mid range at some point, either finish off in it or start to get strong in it, because you like I don't know. There's a lot of decks right now that feel their strongest in different phases
Hmm.
of the game. I mean, you got Gogeta's, blasting people on turn 3 at this point, but you've also got Sin Shenron hoping that you get to turn 6 so they can lock you out of the game. It's wild, wild west out here, and you really got to keep your head on a swivel. But going into Miami, that is my plan. I need to tune and play against King Piccolo until I internalize the matchup completely with the deck I'm playing. Sin is honestly a matter of removal and pressure. It's not like they draw a million cards, but they commit to board and make really strong setups. So when you start punching holes in that setup, they have to rely on their tap 6 to apply enough pressure to kill you. And if you are able to punch holes in their board and either kill them before that turn 6, which admittedly is hard, it is still yellow, don't get me wrong, or play a card that makes it extremely hard for them to tap 6. Like, I don't know, a Unison in blue with God Sealing in hand, or a Vegeta Unison with its -2. You can potentially put them in a really hard place. So yeah, that's pretty much that. I'm not trying to like wish anything bad into existence, but I don't really see Soul Striker as much of a threat because it's still Soul Striker. It does what it does and it's powerful, but they haven't really gained anything new. Their place in the format hasn't even really changed. It's just still a consistently solid deck.
Yeah.
It still does all the same things that it did before, being consistently solid.
Yeah,
So
that's the thing with Soul Striker. Is that like, and this is true for like all decks. Like, I'm not trying to say like, yo, like you gotta be like Giga Brained for Soul Striker, but Soul Striker being like the epitome of a mid range deck just means that like it is the deck doesn't really do that much work for you. It accrues advantage pretty easily, but because it's one of those decks where you have a million options and you kind of just need to weigh what's the best option for every single turn, it is incredibly pilot dependent. um, Not, I wouldn't like, I'd say in general you can get a half decent performance without too much trouble because the leader does give you a lot of flexibility in terms of like making mistakes and stuff. But if you want to like perform well, like get a top cut finish with Soul Striker, you need to put a lot of time into the deck and you need to like like you need to earn every single game, right? Like I very few times when I play Soul Striker at a high competitive level do I feel like I cruise through a game unless like my opponent just didn't see what they needed to and I was able to like draw a million cards to do like deal with everything they had. So Soul Striker is so strong. It'll do things. The new tools that it got like give it some new ways to play, which can be like extremely oppressive if like you don't have a way to deal with it. But in general, if the strong pilots of the game aren't on Soul Striker, odds are the deck isn't going to have a breakout win unless there's a player that no one's heard of that like just has put a deep amount of time into the deck. So just because a lot of players right now are on other decks, the likelihood of seeing like a lot of Soul Striker tops, and even that's not impossible. We did see a blue red Soul Striker end up placing this past weekend, but we aren't going to see it in as high numbers as people would expect, even though the deck is still incredibly solid. So it's one of those things where like it might get a placement here and there, but right now I think a lot of players are just kind of playing other things, which will lead it to seeing the kind of performances we're seeing right now.
Oh,
um as far
sheesh.
as far as things to be surprised about, I think unfortunately for Zamasu slash Goku Black, I think that deck hasn't fallen flat, but just hasn't been performing the way people have been expecting it to. I think performance, not like parts population size, is still of a
Mhm.
decent size because people still really love Goku Black more than anything else and kind of want to see the deck succeed. But I do think if we're talking in that blue yellow realm, you are probably better off leaning on Soul Striker than you are at this moment with Zamasu. If I had to say, especially now that with the lesser number of population as well as top performances from Soul Striker, we're going to see people dedicate less sideboard slots to dealing with blue at the moment.
Yeah.
All right. So that's pretty much it in terms of our coverage for the fest and what to expect. Is there anything on the fest that you'd like to cover before we pivot off of this, Chris?
Honestly, one thing that was surprising me, I thought there'd be a lot more backlash to BO1 pre-side, but a lot of players are saying that it felt really, really good. The TO, they felt kind of messed things up, but they felt personally that these were feeling really, really, really good. And I dig that. I honestly dig that a lot. So kudos for trying something new and it actually working. There's some things that we need to go into though. I think that these tournaments should be pre-side best of one Swiss and then best of three top cut. I think that would be perfect in all honesty. Second, 25 minutes for like, was it? Isn't 25 minutes for pre-side best of one?
25 minutes and then 5 minutes overtime with two
Yeah, no,
turns
that's
each.
on. That's straight up on cock and balls. Just give it
Bro,
30 minutes with 5 minutes.
I am going to break the online fest with these time rules.
Literally, just make it 30 minutes with 5 minutes overtime. Like you're already making us have to play BO1, and that's the king of variants. Please don't make the time clock the real gangster here too. Like that's all I gotta say. Ignorant.
Yeah, I do think like we have best of one regionals in which those are like 50 minutes plus 10 minutes overtime, like all of last year, and those still had draws. So like I just don't understand the justification of where this will be okay as a 25-minute. And I get the celebrations are or the fest are more celebration style events where they're supposed to be more fun and not as serious, but nevertheless, I mean there's some pretty bougie pricing on the line. So um who knows? We'll see. Um Eh. We'll see if my attempt at breaking the format this weekend will work, and if it doesn't, then that's fine. That's okay as well. But I do think best of one moving forward. I agree with the way that you'd format it. I think best of one, Swiss going into a best of three top cut is definitely primo for just about most tournaments, and then we can keep the cream of the crop, the nationals of the season and all that, we can keep those into best of three all day and just accept that, it's going to be a long day just because it's the most competitive tournament of the year. So, with that said, those were our main topics for today. And actually, we don't have any questions in the SC mailbag. I think this is our first week ever since like week 2 or 3 when people finally started asking questions. So if you guys have
Wait, how
any
could you?
so if you guys have any questions that you'd like us to answer on air, we already throw a lot of opinions out there, but if you want even more of those, then you guys can tweet at us with the hashtag SC mailbag, or you can go on our Discord and there are channels there with the SC mailbag where you guys can drop your questions right there and we will answer them live. With that said, though, just to tie it all together before we go on to close out the show, I do have, guess, my own little question in terms of the God Rare pre-release. $800 it has sold for, 900. People couldn't get 1,000 for it. 2 weeks later, we are now at a point where we've seen them sell for 1,000, 1,100, 1,200, going all the way up to 1,700, which seems kind of like where it's stabilized. So now we're about the 1,500 ballpark where we're averaging out for these God Rares. Now, that's way more on theme with where I thought these were going to land. The fact that some of them sold for $800 to $900 blows my mind. Where do you think, you give it another month, where do you think the projections for the value of the God Rare will land?
Look, you can't anticipate stupid, okay? No, no, for real though. Like, there comes a point where a card gets high enough, and I'm just like, if I pull it, there's going to be a hard discussion with the Council of Chris's on whether we keep it or we sell it. Because if we sell it, we may never see it again. But if we keep it, you know what? Money comes and goes, and that sounds really weird because it sounds like something you only say when you have a lot of money. But let me put it out there. That is not me. That is not your boy. I am not balling. I am trying to get out of the mud. I really do. I'm living decent. I pay my bills. I can clearly play these games. But I'm not balling enough to literally look at a Vegeta SCR God Rare and be like, money comes, money goes. What I'm saying is, in the grand scheme of things, if you take all the times in the past month that you went and got fast food or went to a restaurant when you could have stayed at home, you look at your microtransactions you play in your games, you look at the last, times you bought cards when you didn't need anything from the set, you just wanted to pull. Chances are you're already nearing how much this God Rare cost. And that's a really kind of like more so life lesson than it is like card game lesson. You spend more than you realize unless you are extremely meticulous in most cases. And there's no price on what makes you happy for the most part. But that ain't me, fam. If I pull that card, I'm probably going to keep it because I think the chances of me spending more trying to pull it again than actually just outright buying it are freaking high. But I'm not going out and buying a God Rare. That's just not me. Like that just is not it. My SCR Vegeta works just fine. I will always know in my heart that I was the first person on the planet to pull that card, and that makes it my own God Rare, beyond God Neo God Rare, first population 1 in my hands. But no, it's weird because if it's already at 1,500 now, like Digimon with Omnimon, that card dropped. That card used to be like 800, and then it kind of settled, and it became like a $400,
Yeah.
$300 card.
It's got a million printings. That's kind of the issue with it.
A million printings, and another thing that kind of sucks, not necessarily about it, they made it into a card that was already circulated as just a strong, decent card. Set 1, most red or blue Digimon decks ran it. Most red ones, not exactly like most blue. The point is, the card was circulated already, and this was a reprint. This card is a valid, probably the most valid red SCR we had ever received. And it has a high rarity now that's hard to find. So this card is going to retain weight because it not only is rare, it is playable. Not just playable, it is actually changing how red decks work. Red decks now have a secret rare that you can tap for. It has deflect, so it has protection, and you can destroy the board and crit your opponent and make, the fact that it destroys your opponent's board one-sidedly and minuses your opponent's leader by 5k means that it softens up your opponent's leader to be swung on by everything you have on board. If you play Vegeta onto a stacked board and then just crit them for 1 and just blow up their stuff, you were already in a overwhelming position. now your 25Ks are swinging on a 10K leader. That's disgusting in terms of combo power. They better have the counters, or they're probably going to die. Or worst case scenario, you play this in a simplified game state and you're swinging twice for 40K, knowing you're going to remove him and blow up stuff. It's just wild. So this card is going to retain its value. The God Rare is easily going to cruise at over 1,000. And honestly, this game lasts 5 more years. God Rare is going to become a collectible masterpiece. I actually see this card going up higher than a card like Apex. I don't think it's going to go higher than a mint. I don't think it's going to go higher than a mint condition uh, Awakened Power, because that set is just incredibly bonkers to find. But I can foresee, given the time that Apex took to rise like that, I can see this card being way more than that because it's harder to find and it's more playable.
Right. Hmm. True. True. I mean, there's a lot to be said, right? Like, it's people are still opening boxes of the set. It's an incredibly popular set, so we'll see where things land on it. So time to tell, but I do agree with you. I think there's a lot that the card has going for it that'll lend to it just being really valuable. And I think you rang it like really well in terms of like money will come and go. And like I just and part of that's kind of why I just collect like I could move a lot of the cards that I have, and I have some decently valuable ones. But to me, it's just like and obviously like it is a privileged position to be in, to say like, like I just don't need the money at the moment, so like all the better for me. And obviously that's not true for everybody, but if that is a scenario where you're in, it's just like I'll just hold on to it, whereas like the money at the moment isn't going to change my life in a way. So it's we'll see if I ever pull one. We'll see from the 1 box I get from 3 mana whenever that box comes around, because your boy just doesn't buy sealed. So we'll see if that can come around, and if it does, baller. If not, we'll see if I ever get the opportunity to pick up one. But it's not. I mean, at least the way it looked means that I didn't have to pick up 2, because originally when they announced the God Rare, if it came out to something like incredibly more stylized, kind of like how Digimon do it, I do feel like your boy would have ended up having to pick up 2, one to grade and one to play, just because I like flex them like that. But alas, I am perfectly happy with the one I bought. Whenever it gets here, we'll see. It is coming all the way from Hawaii, and that usually means that it'll take 2 to 3 weeks to get here, even on priority shipping, which is wild. But hey, this is what you get when you ship from faraway lands. Cool. Cool. So those were our topics, our discussions, and of course the question period / not question period. As far as this week goes, Chris, of course, you're going to be in Miami, so I'm sure that's going to skew what you have coming this week. But what can our listeners / your viewers, followers, and fans expect from you this week?
So here we go, guys. Tomorrow, I am going to, I think, come out with, again, like my comprehensive, really in-depth what I think I should be, what I think people should be looking for in Miami. I'm going to go into like just the normal UniXDBS levels of speculation, rambling that I normally go into. No, I'm going to try to write it out so it's not like, just terribly rambling, but I think that's the time for it. And as a side note, I'll probably just finish off some of the new info I've received about the drama that's gone down in Texas, because some of the heat does need to be lifted from certain parties. Not necessarily like just blindly forgive, but I don't want to be too hard where I don't need to be. Other things I'm going to be doing this week, I think I might touch on the cell deck. Everybody's kind of been in there, but to like really do something this late when it's been out for this long, and by this long I mean a couple days, I'd really have to dive into the entire card pool of usable cards to make a video that hasn't already been done before, and I'm not sure if I'm going to have time to do it this weekend. I won't front. A lot of this week is going to be tuned towards me getting ready for Miami the best I can. So definitely expect some Miami prep videos, and past that, I felt like this morning I had so many ideas in my head, so I'll probably come back tomorrow morning. Y'all are just gonna have to stay tuned. Like literally, yeah, Miami prep is gonna be there, and that's probably gonna be the best of what I can put out. Of course, post Miami, we should have a lot of content. I'm going to be there with a lot of bros. I'm going to bring the camcorder, so chances are we're going to have a lot of deck profiles going on. The like Mangekyo Cloud again has just flared up even harder. It is stronger now. My Susanoo is gaining armor. I should be able to snipe a whole bunch of deck profiles and interesting little interviews because I don't know. I feel like I'm getting more and more kind of just room to stretch my legs in the community as a content creator. So it is what it is. Just expect a lot of coverage. I'm going to be doing a lot of lives. I'm going to be putting up some videos. I think something I may try to do, if you guys like, just let me know. I'll float the idea in my next video too. I might do lives in between rounds.
Ooh.
And just talk about the experience. And then I'll do a compilation where I sit down and really break it down. So you'll kind of get my like blow by blow coverage mid-tournament, but then you'll also get the, you know, afterthought, hindsight 2020 intense breakdown when I get back. That way there's no shortage of content, but you can also kind of see the difference of playing and processing versus reflection and, you know, just actual analysis of how things were played out. So yeah, I'm going to be trying to push the envelope. This is just the beginning on how much tournament coverage I put out. I'm very pleased with myself because as far as I could see, I was probably the fastest person to put out this stuff. And that bodes well for me because if I can put that together on days that I'm literally working, watching a stream, not a stream, Texas, and then on day 2, a stream and another stream, thanks, Eggman. I think, oh yeah, shout out to Latin because Latin America had streams busting on 2 days. Like, had me looking over here not understanding a single word what people were saying, but at least they were streaming. Texas. So, anywho, actually, I can't even hate on Texas. Play TCG. Anywho, I feel pretty good. If I can get that coverage up while working, I can only imagine how much coverage I can get up and how more polished it can be if I had the day off just to relax and gather info without clients coming in and stuff like that. So, we're going to crank it up. Like I said, I say it almost every video. I want to be either the best, if not one of the best content creators for this game you can watch. And in this podcast, you get to see 2 of the best content creators for Dragon Ball Super card game. Spit, facts, and opinions, and occasionally bash each other's favorite decks. So yeah.
True, very true. Absolutely. So, you know, guys, he's been on top of his game in terms of coverage. So if that's what you guys really want to get, then definitely go and check him out. On our end, I took a bit of a break last week. You know, playing in that exhausted state at the regional actually drained me out way more than I was expecting. So it also kind of
cut off blood flow.
Okay, my guy.
Chin strap too tight. Not enough oxygen.
Bro, you best come out with the top this weekend, or if not, oh my god.
All right, we'll do best.
But yeah, so I ended up taking a break last week. I ended up not streaming any games because I just kind of needed a break from playing. But we're back into things. Odds are we'll get some streams, and of course we will have our stream on Saturday for our run of the online Canadian Fest. So we'll be doing that. In terms of videos, I don't know. There's not too much I want to talk about that people haven't already covered. So you guys know me. I only really make videos when the topic kind of makes sense for me. So we'll see. On that front, it's been a little bit slow just trying to figure out how I want to position the channel and where I want to take it. But nevertheless, the streams will keep coming. The gameplay will keep coming. And I've gotten some new cards to kind of mess around and play with some new stuff. So we'll be fiddling around with that on our end. But everybody, with that said, that was our show for today. Thank you guys so much for listening. And of course, until the next show, best of luck with your top decks.
And I got one final closing comment. Just to stay rent-free in your head. If you guys look up the SPR art for King Vegeta's imposing presence, look directly in King Vegeta's face and wonder to yourself, did he kill the barber that shaped up his beard? Because King Vegeta was pretty ruthless, but if you look at this artwork, I feel like that barber is no longer, like, he died long before Frieza blew up the planet. That's all I gotta say. Just look at the artwork and you'll see what I mean. I hope you guys have a great night.